All right, we're in Parshas Terumah, and yesterday we were talking about what they donated. Now we're going into the utensils in the Beis Hamikdash on page 446, and it's really fascinating what the Meforshim see. The symbolism is obviously a tremendous amount of symbolism in the utensils. And it's fascinating to see what the Meforshim see here. So take a look. First of all, it says, "Ve'asu aron atzei shitim," 446. They should make the aron out of acacia wood. That's how they translate shitim. Amasayim v'chetzi orko, 2.5 amas long. V'ama v'chetzi rachbo, 1.5 amas wide. V'ama v'chetzi kamoso, and 1.5 high. So the Torah gives us the dimensions of the Aron Kodesh. Now, if you go ahead for 1 second, I just want to show you. So the Aron Kodesh was 2.5 by 1.5 by 1.5, 2.5 long by 1.5 wide. Thank you, Mayor. 2.5 long by 1.5 wide and 1.5 high. If you take a look on the next page, on page 448, it goes to the Shulchan. Now, the Shulchan is not as big as it looks in the picture because the Shulchan is where they put the showbreads, the 12 showbreads. And when you see that picture on page 449, the shulchan is only that one internal square thing. Those planks that are standing up and the shelving tubes, that's not part of the shulchan. That's not part of the shulchan. The shulchan itself is actually smaller than the Aron Kodesh. So it says over here, "V'asiso shulchan atzei shitim," 7 lines from the bottom. You should make the shulchan out of acacia wood. Amasayim orko, 2 amas long, the ama rachbo, and 1 ama wide, the ama v'chetzi komoso, and 1.5 amas high. So the shulchan is actually smaller than the Aron Kodesh. What's several Mefarshim talk about and point out over here is that we're going to see other dimensions that are given in the various utensils and the various equipment other dimensions are given. The only broken dimensions, the only fractional dimensions that we find in the Mishkan by the utensils are by the Aron Kodesh, which is all 3 directions, length, width, and height are all fractions, 2.5 by 1.5 by 1.5. And by the Shulchan, the height dimension is fractional. It's 2 by 1 by 1.5. Yet, and by all the other utensils, there are no fractions at all. There are no fractions at all. So that requires that needs some explanation. So what do you think it is, gentlemen? Why do you think that they're fractional dimensions? You hear what we're saying about fractional? You hear what I mean by fractional dimensions? Yeah. Fractional dimensions means the length, width, and height of the Aron Kodesh are all fractions, and by the Shulchan it's only the height dimension.
The Shulchan is what?
It's only the height dimension is fractional. 1.5 high. It's 2 by 1 by 1.5.
And you're saying that's the Shulchan and the Aron?
That's the Shulchan. The Aron, all 3 are fractional dimensions. 2.5 by 1.5 by 1.5.
What purposes?
That's what I'm asking.
No, what purposes do they serve, respectively?
What purpose? Oh, well, good question. What purposes do they serve? So you tell me what purpose the Aron Kodesh serves. What do you think the Aron Kodesh symbolizes?
It has the Torah in it, right?
All right, and the luchos, right?
Okay.
Right.
So that's perfection.
Okay, good, getting closer. So why is it broken? Huh?
Protection.
So why is it fractions? Why are there fractional dimensions?
Because those who hold it are not perfect?
Oh, getting closer.
Do we have to fulfill?
Getting closer. So what's your name? Benny. So the Shulchan, which has the showbreads on it, represents prosperity, material. What do you call it? Right? That's the showbreads. The 12 showbreads are on it, and each bread is symbolic of one of the tribes. One second, Ezra. So the Shulchan, the Aron Kodesh represents Torah. And when you learn Torah, there's length of Torah, there's breadth of Torah, there's depth of Torah. And a person should always realize that no matter how much Torah you've learned, we're still a fraction. We haven't completed it. We haven't gotten there. There's still more to go. There's always more Torah to go. Not only that, the irony of Torah is the more Torah you learn, the more you realize how far you have to go. When you've only learned a little bit of Torah, okay, I learned all about it. I learned about, I basically know all about it. Right? Till you learn one Tosfos and you realize I know nothing about it. Right? Right? And then the more you learn, the more you realize how much there is to learn and how broad and how vast. It's almost like looking. That's why it's called the Talmud is called the sea, the Yam HaTalmud, the sea of the Talmud. The Yam HaTalmud, right? That when you go to the sea, and I was in California, I saw the Pacific Ocean. All right, basically saw it, flying over the Pacific Ocean. I basically saw what?
You didn't go to the actual beach?
No, I didn't go to the actual beach. No, I didn't go to the actual beach. I had no interest in going to. I didn't have the opportunity, and had I had the opportunity, I would have passed on it. I have zero interest in going to the beach. And there are 80 circumstances. I don't go to the beach in Israel, even obviously the separate beach, and I don't go to the separate beach because then all you do is you come home with sand for the rest of the day. Yeah, and so you go to the beach. You're bored after 10 minutes. Right, trampled by little Hasidic kids. Right, you're bored after 10 minutes, and then you come home with a headache, dehydrated, and sand all over. Right, you say, frankly, no. That doesn't interest me. Swimming pools are okay, and certainly water parks I like. Going down slides, that's fun. No sand in water parks. That I like. The beach is hot. Right, and the beach is hot. There's zero interest in the beach whatsoever. So I'm looking at the Pacific Ocean. Hey, there's the Pacific Ocean. Wow, wow, that's pretty big. But my guide weiter. Okay, I said a big. Yeah, that's because you're looking at the surface. If you would start diving down in the ocean, then you start realizing how vast. So what do they claim? What percentage of ocean has been discovered and experienced? And after all this time, like a very low percent. They don't know the first thing what's going on down there. They keep finding other things, and there are systems down there. They talk about rivers in the ocean. I don't know how that works, but there are rivers in the ocean. How can there be a river in the ocean, man? It's all the same water, There's a river in the ocean. There's a this in the ocean. Lost cities and ships and dust and jets and all sorts of fish. They're constantly discovering new types of fish that they never knew about. So they don't know anything. That's what Gemara. That's what Torah is like. All of a sudden you start delving in and deeper and deeper and deeper. Oh my goodness, this is endless. Which is exactly what the broken dimensions are to communicate. One second. Yes. What is the shulchan? What is the showbread? The showbread represents prosperity. By the way, there's no coincidence there are 12 showbreads on it. Because that is the source of prosperity. The bracha comes down from Shemayim onto the breads and spreads out to the 12 tribes. So the bracha represents material, the shulchan represents, you were asking what the shulchan represents? It represents material well-being, whereas the Aron Kodesh is obviously Torah. When it comes to material well-being, how should we view ourselves? Length and width, that means on our dimension down here, which is my personal needs, I should view myself as complete. Whereas when it comes to spiritual needs, spending money on mitzvahs, I should view myself as incomplete. Just today, I ordered new tefillin straps. Right? I ordered new tefillin straps. Right? The guy, my tefillin straps are worn out a little bit. They're on the way to getting worn out. You don't wait till they're completely worn out. It's going to cost me 400 shekels. I'm happy to pay it. 400 shekels. Yeah, 400 shekels. People pay for a meal. People pay 400 shekels. They go to a restaurant. People pay 400 shekels. You can pay 400 shekels for tefillin straps, right? I'm just telling you that's what we should always see. If you can buy yourself something, so buy a little bit more. Spend a little more. And the mitzvahs, the Brisker Rav. I love this story. The Brisker Rav once bought a new pair of tefillin. So a guy said to the Brisker Rav, what was wrong with your old tefillin? The Brisker Rav said, nothing. He said, so why did you buy a new pair of tefillin? So the Brisker Rav said, when's the last time you bought a new suit? He said, about 3 weeks ago. He goes, what's wrong with your old suit? He goes, nothing. So why'd you buy a new suit? He says, once in a while I like to buy a new suit. He says, yeah, once in a while I like to buy a new pair of tefillin. That's huge. That's huge. I mean, who in their right mind buys tefillin? You get your tefillin at your bar mitzvah, and that's what you're buried with. That's what most people. That's what you go. That's what why would you go and buy a new pair of tefillin? Why would you waste money on a new pair of tefillin if the old pair of tefillin are perfectly good, right? It's an unbelievable story. It's an unbelievable story. We think, well, mitzvahs, let's not get carried away over here. It's like, no, the mitzvah, that's what the money's for. So when it comes to material, we should view ourselves as the Mishnah in Pirkei says, Ezu Asher Somayach B'chalko. Who's the wealthy man? One who's happy with his portion. Now I have an ongoing argument with a colleague of mine. We have a different shot in that Mishnah. Ezu Asher, the Mishnah says, who's the wealthy man? One who's happy with his portion. So he tells me this is a guy who is as holy as you're going to come across. This guy says, look, be happy with what you got, then you're considered rich. I said, that's not what the Mishnah says. The Mishnah says, Ezu Asher. The Mishnah say, who's the rich guy? We're talking about, before anything, rich guys. We're talking about rich. He claims we're talking about everybody. And as long as you're happy with what you got, you're considered rich. I said, don't give me that. I don't want to hear that. We're talking about rich guys. Now, once you're rich, what makes you really defined as rich? When I'm a rich guy, I'm happy with what I've got. He doesn't like that shot. He says, no, you can be rich but poor. No, you can't. You're rich, you're rich. By definition, you're rich. You may not be happy. How do you become rich and happy? Be happy with your wealth, which most people aren't, right? But at the end of the day, that's what the Torah is telling you. And your material and your own material possessions, be satisfied with what you've got. See yourself as complete. If you can afford more and you need it for your well-being, it's a very, very tricky line, by the way, very tricky line. What do I, if I have a lot, let's say I have a lot of money, it should happen soon. By the way, I bought a Powerball ticket. Yeah. In America. I bought a Powerball ticket, didn't make it. Right, I was in America. I had to buy a Powerball ticket. It was either, one. You only bought one.
Isn't the weekly, how often is it?
I'm not sure, but I think this one was for $700 million. Which I didn't win, by the way. I don't know if you can tell. I'd be the same person, so you probably can't tell. I would be so happy. I'd be that Ezu Asher Somayach B'chalko. Even the last trip I made to America, right before I went, my wife said to me, "You're going to buy a Powerball ticket, aren't you?" And I didn't because I couldn't find one. Here I was walking in California past the 7-Eleven, and all of a sudden I see a Powerball. I said, I got to buy one. Listen, I got to at least say I did my hishtadlus. Didn't work, Shmuel. Didn't make it. Oh, well, what can you do? Someone's running around with my $700 million. So, what do you call it? It's always difficult to know exactly how much you should, if I could afford it, should I buy it or not? That's tricky. You are allowed to have a nice car. I'd say the line is, a lot depends why you're doing it. If you're doing it to poke out other people's eyes, you shouldn't do it. You're doing it to really poke out other people, then you shouldn't do it. If you're doing it because you feel, I enjoy it, it's not anything. And the test is, would you do it if nobody knew about it? Would you do it if nobody knew about it? That's really the test. Right? Would you go on a vacation if you couldn't tell anybody about it? Would you go on a cruise if you couldn't tell anybody about it? If you would, yes, I'd go on a cruise. Well, would you buy a what do you call it? Would you buy a Lamborghini if you couldn't tell anybody about it? Right? Most people wouldn't. Yeah. Most people, if you buy Lamborghinis, it's to make sure that everybody sees you got a Lamborghini. Right? If nobody's going to know about it, you'll stick with an Accord. Right, but if nobody knows about it, but if you're buying a Lamborghini, it's obviously so somebody should find out about it. So that's the difference between. That's number one. Number two is a Torah learner. What you learn from the broken dimensions. The other Mefarshim say that a Torah learner has to be humble. In order to learn Torah, you have to be humble. And if you're not humble, then learn a Tosos. That'll humble you, right? Anybody else? If you ever think that you're the smartest guy in the room, just go learn a Tosos, right? Then you'll find out that you're not. It's a very humbling experience. But a Torah learner has to be willing to learn. Sometimes people are not willing to learn. They would like to do the educating. You know, the guy, a person feels, well, listen, I had a guy once came to Ohr Somayach years ago, one of my first here. This guy was drop dead brilliant. And he was so upset, angry in the Gemara shir. This guy went to Princeton, and he was just a brilliant guy. He was so upset, but not like enjoyable challenges. He was actually angry and upset that he encountered something where he wasn't the smartest guy in the room. That here's a college dropout is running circles around him in a Gemara shir. And he's so frustrated that whatever he said was wrong. Oh, well, not quite. There's another way. And that sort of thing. Because you got to be a little humility. Who told you you're the smartest guy in the room? Who said you're going to be the smartest guy? It requires humility. You got to be willing to listen to what other people have to say. If you're learning with your chavrusa, maybe there's merit to what your chavrusa is saying. So the Torah requires a person has to be humble. And if he's not humble, the Torah humbles you. But unlike other wisdoms, right? A guy who wants to become a mathematician, or a guy who wants to become a physicist, you could be completely immoral and have zero scruples, and it has nothing to do with your understanding of math, philosophy, or physics. Yet Torah, you see in Pirkei Avos that there are 48 ways to acquire Torah. You're familiar with that, the 48 ways? So among these 48 ways are helping other people, right? Being humble, not. What's that got to do with wisdom? Helping other people. If you had to study for a physics test, you go, okay, I got to do well on this physics test. I'm going to help you. What's one thing got to do with the other? You got to study for a physics test. You study physics, because Torah requires a receptacle. A human being, in order to absorb Torah, you have to be a receptacle for Torah. That means the more refined the person is in his character, the more he's going to absorb Torah. You don't need that in any other, because Torah isn't just a wisdom. Torah is a way of living. It's a wisdom that's a way of living. So you have to the broken dimensions are that you have to be humble. Number 3, there are two symbols of. One second, I made it mixed up. Yeah, there are. What is the shulchan, which we're going to see about, is the symbol of kingdom, malchus, right? The king, because the king's in charge of the prosperity of the Jewish people. The mizbeach, the altar, is a symbol of what? Kahuna, right? The Aron Kodesh is a symbol of Torah. Now, what's the menorah a symbol of? That's what it is. What's it a symbol of? The light of the menorah with the 7 branches is a symbol of what?
Knowledge. Shabbos.
Also Torah. Also Torah. There's said to be 7 branches of wisdom. The menorah is the light, right? We had on Hanukkah. The menorah is the light of Torah, which lightens up the surroundings and so on and so forth. So one of the contemporary Gedolim asks the following question. Why are there 2 symbols of Torah in the Beis Hamikdash? There's the Aron Kodesh, and there's the menorah. Why are there 2 symbols of the Torah?
The oral Torah and the written Torah.
Oh, excellent. Oral Torah and written Torah. Very good. Yeah, that gets a psh. Yeah, go ahead. Psh. Yeah, there you go. That gets a psh. They're oral Torah and the written Torah. Not only that, where did the Aron Kodesh go? In the Holy of Holies. Totally inaccessible. Totally inaccessible, because the Aron Kodesh represents the written Torah. The written Torah, the blue book is zero tamperability. Can't tamper with the written Torah. What about the oral Torah? The oral Torah is for, part of our wisdom is what we call chiddush, right? Novel ideas, as long as they're within the framework of Torah. By the way, it's one of the ironies. Is there a Gemara here? Is there? I need a thinner one. All right, this one's good enough. This one's good enough. What we're holding over here, gentlemen, I just want to show you one of the ironies of Jewish life. What we're holding over here is the written Torah, okay? And what I'm holding in my hands over here is the oral Torah. This is the oral Torah. Now, that's very strange. That's quite ironic, that this is the oral Torah, which has a whole lot more writing than the written Torah, right? And not only has more writing, but you've probably never even seen, it's got the size of the writing is small, smaller, smallest, minuscule, with a whole lot of writing in the back. This is the oral Torah. Isn't that irony lost on you? Right? That's the oral Torah. The answer is that the oral Torah was the oral Torah was written down so that we don't forget it. But the nature of the oral Torah is it's still oral. There's still more to add on to it. It constantly grows. Then you notice the later the svarim, the bigger they are. The Mishnah is this big. The Gemara is this big. The commentaries are this big. Right? Yeah. And then there's Tosfos is this big. You know, as you go along. So the later commentaries even, that's all Torah Shabbal Peh. That's the oral Torah. The written Torah is just this blue book. This is the whole thing right here. So this, the Aron Kodesh goes in the Holy of Holies because this can't be touched or tampered. A sofer who's writing a Sefer Torah has to be looking constantly exactly right at the exact way with every nuance and every halacha. Whereas the oral Torah, there's a lot of, yelling and kvetching and novelty, as long as it's with the framework of Torah. As long as it's chidush, it's an innovation. It's not a change. Not a change. I told you when you play chess, there are all sorts of creative moves in chess, right? Remember I told you Bobby Fischer drove Boris Spassky to the hospital when he played him. He actually drove him into the hospital. He had a nervous breakdown in his competition with Bobby Fischer because Bobby Fischer was known for his creativity. His creativity. This Russian, he was just going nuts with this guy, right? And this Bobby Fischer was coming up. That's all creativity. But I can't go and use my rook. If my rook, I've got a very creative move in chess. When I'm in trouble, I take my rook and jump over a few pieces. Right? It works all the time. Right? Isn't that creative? No, that's called cheating.
It's illegal.
That's called cheating. That doesn't. You can't go jumping over anything with a rook, right? Unless the other guy's not looking. You can't go jumping over anything with a rook. That means that when it comes to even our novel interpretations of Torah, there's a difference between an innovation that's within the framework of Torah, that obeys Torah rules, and a change. If you change it, that's reform. That's reform. Rabbi Gottlieb told a story about a guy who was sitting in a college sociology class. Not sure what sociology means, but that's what it was. And I think I took a sociology class in college, right? I don't exactly remember what we learned, but so we're in this college sociology class. I got to tell you a different story. A wonderful, beautiful moment. This Rosh Chodesh moment. I was in this college, this guy's in a sociology class, so the teacher gets up, the instructor, Rabbi Gottlieb told us, the instructor gets up and he looks at the list of names. And he says, O'Connor, you're Christian, aren't you? You're Catholic or so. He says, yeah. He says, can you tell us something about your religion? So O'Connor gets up and for 10 minutes he speaks about his religion. And he looks on the list and he goes, hey, Mohammed, you're a Muslim, aren't you? Yeah. Can you tell us something about your religion? He gets up and for 10 minutes talks about Islam. And he looks at the list and says, Goldstein, you're Jewish, aren't you? He says, yeah. He says, can you tell us something about your religion? He says, I'm sorry, I can't. He says, why not? He says, because I'm Reform. So he looks at me and goes, well, don't you think you ought to know something about your religion before you reform it? He said, Goldstein heard that, and as a result of that, started on his path and became a Baal Tshuva. Yeah. The little musser from the instructor over there, right? I had another guy that I met. I know this guy personally. This is unbelievable. This guy was he was about 17 years old, 18 years old. He was in a private Catholic school. And he goes in one day, somebody taps him on the shoulder and says, Bishop Garver wants to speak to you. That was his name. So this guy goes in, Bishop Garver is the principal of the school. I don't know what Bishop Garver, so he walks in, and Bishop Garver says to him, hey, Levin, what's the difference between Maimonides and Nachmanides? Levin looks at me, I don't know, I never heard of Maimonides, I never not heard of Nachmanides. So Bishop Garver says, Levin, he pulls out of his desk drawer a translated version of the Ramban. He's got the Ramban in English. And he says, Levin, you don't know what you're missing. Go to your people. The guy told me he didn't know what hit him. No, it hit him. He was like, this guy completely secular. So he started his search, and he ended up by the New Square Hasidim, the Square Hasidim in New York. Where are they? New Jersey? The square by the Square Rebbe. From there he went to Baltimore, near Yisrael in Baltimore, by Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg, got his smicha. Eventually he got married. Said at the head table, the Square Rebbe was sitting there, Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg was sitting there, and Bishop Garver was sitting there. He said to me, Bishop Garver had the most nachas of anybody. That's how he said it. What do we call it? He didn't know what hit him. Guy didn't know what hit him. So if there's change, there's innovation, there's novelty, which is what we call chiddush, and there's shinui. Shinui means change. We're not allowed to change it. So the Aron Kodesh, which is in the Holy of Holies, is one aspect of Torah. The menorah, where was the menorah? Remember, there were 3 sections of the Mishkan. There's the Azara, which is the general area, the courtyard. Then there's the Kodesh, the holy. Who's allowed into the holy? Only the Kohanim. That's where the menorah was. That's where the Mizbeach HaKtoris was, the Mizbeach, the altar for the incense. That's where the Shulchan was. But only the Kohanim could go in there. Then there's the Kodesh HaKadoshim, which is the Aron Kodesh. Only the Aron Kodesh. So the menorah was visible to people. So the menorah is Torah Shebaal Peh. Because Torah Shebaal Peh is accessible. We're allowed to, I don't want to use the word tamper because it gives a negative indication. We're allowed to there's input. There were input from our own input into Torah Shebaal Peh, not in Torah Shebeksav. There's no input in Torah Shebeksav. We could come up with interesting ideas, but that becomes Torah Shebaal Peh. What Chazal say is Torah Shebaal Peh, but this is Torah Shebeksav. Okay, now, there are 2 aspects to a Talmid Chacham. It's unbelievable. There are 2 aspects to a Torah scholar. One aspect of the Torah scholar is he has to be hidden away in a beis medrash. Put yourself away in a beis medrash where nobody could bother you. The other aspect of that's the symbol of the Aron Kodesh. It's in the Kodesh. It's in the Holy of Holies. Sit in a beis medrash and learn Torah, and don't be bothered by anybody. And you don't get involved with anything else. You're in a beis medrash learning Torah. That's one aspect of the Talmid Chacham. The other aspect of the Talmid Chacham is that you have an influence on your surroundings. Right? The classic example is Reb Chaim Kanievsky. What did he do his whole life? He learned. And the disciple, his father, said, never take a position. At one point, he was going to be a Rebbe in a yeshiva. The disciple said, no, you're going to sit and learn, which he was born happy to do. And so who ended up having the biggest influence on our entire generation? Reb Chaim Kanievsky. Right? By doing nothing but sitting and learning. Do you know he's written over 100,000 correspondences? He wrote over 100,000 correspondences. He got sacks of mail every day. And he sat there, he had a certain amount of time answering letters, what do you call it? And he wrote Sfarim. And he's quoted every single day. And people went there for brachas. You ever saw what it was like by him for a bracha? You waited in line. He had the whole world on top of him. You know what his idea of a vacation was? You know what Chaim's idea of vacation was? He had an upstairs. To go up, to lock the front door and go upstairs for a couple of days. That was his idea of vacation. He didn't go on a cruise. He didn't go to a hotel with 5 meals a day. No. That was his idea of vacation, his ideal vacation. He went to Tzfas once in a while. He went to Tzfas, but he didn't go walk around Tzfas. He stayed in a courtyard in the house in Tzfas and he learned. That was his idea of a vacation. So the person, there are 2 aspects of Talmid Chacham. One is that you got to put yourself away in a room. The other one is that you then become, you know who else was? You know who else was like that? His father-in-law, Rav Elyashiv, which is the one who said this pshat. And this pshat is a perfect self-description. Do you know what Rav Elyashiv's schedule was? Rav Elyashiv did not learn in the yeshivas. Rav Elyashiv was an only child. His father was a posek. He was an only child. They came over from Europe. He was living here. And from the earliest age, he used to go to a beis medrash. There's this little hovel in the Mea Sharb. He had the key. And he would go in there and he would learn by himself. Rav Elyashiv would learn by himself. He learned in Kolo for 2 weeks, then he left. It wasn't for him. And he learned by himself all day, every day. And it wasn't until much later that Rav Elyashiv ended up becoming the biggest posek in Klal Yisrael. Not only that, when he learned, you know who his son-in-law is, his other son-in-law? You've heard of Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach? Rav Zalman Baruch and Rav Yashiv were Mechutanim. Rav Israel Auerbach, who's a Rav in Beit Vegan, was a massive Talmud Chacham. So he is Rav Yashiv's son-in-law also. So the shidduch came up for Rav Yashiv's daughter. So Rav Israel Auerbach was supposed to go to this little base medrash to meet the potential father-in-law, which was Rav Yashiv. So Rav Yashiv said, come to this base medrash at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So Rav Israel Auerbach gets there at 4 o'clock and he hears voices coming. He hears two voices coming from inside the base medrash. So he didn't want to interrupt. So when Rav Yashiv finished learning at 7 o'clock, he was on his way home. There's Rav Yoachim standing outside. He said, "Where were you?" He said, "I was here at 4 o'clock, but I didn't want to interrupt, and the voices never stopped. I wasn't going to come and interrupt the chavrusa while you were learning." Then he looks inside. There was no chavrusa. That's how Rav Yashiv learned. Rav Yashiv learned with himself, like you're learning with a chavrusa. Because Rava says, there you go. But Abaye holds differently. Why would Abaye hold differently, though? Why should Abaye hold differently? What was his svar? Yeah, but Tosfos says not like that. He would learn as if he was learning, and that's what he did all day, every day. For years and years and years and years and years. Then eventually he becomes the biggest influence in Klal Yisrael. He becomes the major posek in Klal Yisrael. Becomes the leader of the generation. So he says that's what the two aspects of the Aron Kodesh represent. Okay? Number one. Number two, take a look at the next posek, Yud Aleph. And there's a misconception, by the way, about the Aron Kodesh. I want to make sure that we get this clarified, because you guys probably saw Raiders of the Lost Ark. So then obviously you saw all the truth. I never saw it. My brother saw it and he told me all about it. That's a movie I'd like to see. But there's a misconception here. Vitzipisa so zahav tahor, you shall coat it with gold. Mi bais umibachutz titzapenu, from inside and from outside you shall coat it. Ve'asisa olav zer zahav saviv, you shall make a gold crown around it. Now, it did not get coated. The Aron, there was 3 boxes. You ever see little kids' toys where there's a big piece of plastic box, and you put a little plastic box in it, another one. There are a bunch of boxes. They're just smaller, and you have to stack them in one into the other. They're little kids' toys. It's one of my favorite kids' toys. You get to stack these boxes, and they go one in the other. The Aron Kodesh was 3 boxes. The middle box was wood, was this acacia wood. And it was coated on the inside and on the outside. Now, it wasn't painted with gold. There was a golden box that went in it, and there was another golden box these 2 boxes went into. You understand what I'm saying? There were 3 boxes. The middle box is the Aron Kodesh, the wooden one. There's gold on the inside and there's gold on the outside. The Torah describes it as being coated, but it wasn't a coating. We think of a coating, you paint on a golden coating, right? That's not what happened. It wasn't painted on. It was a box that was put in it and another box that was on the outside of gold, solid gold. It's a lot of gold, by the way. We'll talk about how much gold it was in a second. But the Aron Kodesh is the wood. Now, what does that teach you? What does it teach you? That the inside has to be gold and the outside has to be gold, but the box itself is wood. What's the difference between wood and gold? Besides value, yeah.
One's alive, one's a plant.
Correct. That means the Aron Kodesh, which is the wooden box, is to teach us, it comes from something that grew. We have to grow. You have to grow in Torah. You have to constantly grow. Torah, you have to constantly grow. On the other hand, what does the gold symbolize on the inside and on the outside? Gold is, depending on right? Gold is generally, we use it, like that's the gold. Wow, he's good as gold. Gold is the standard, right? Gold's the standard for everything good in life. Gold, the golden, right? The gold medal at the Olympics, the gold. That means that a person, both in his insides and outsides, has to be gold. Torah has to turn us into gold on our inside and on our outside. It means my external behavior has to be golden, and my internal behavior has to be golden. By the way, which one's easier? Oh, yeah, it sure is. We're great actors, by the way. They could sign us all up for Hollywood. Outside, they're unbelievable outside. Boy, you should see me davening when everybody's looking. You should see me davening when nobody's around, right? The difference in length of time of davening. Davening with other people, it takes me an hour, 45 minutes. Davening by myself, they haven't got the Olympic stopwatch is needed, for the 100-meter dash. Like, wow, that was fast. You take 3 steps forward, 3 steps back, and we're on the way home. So they're teaching you, yeah, and on the outside, and the inside represents your thought process and your motivations and everything else. On the outside, we're very humble. Oh, I'm so humble. I'm so humble. On the inside, the guy walks around like, I'm Donald Trump. The gold on the inside, the Torah has to turn us into gold on the inside. But not only that, there's more than that. You have to be gold with everybody. You have to be gold with your own family and your own home. Which is harder? You know one of the most astonishing statements I've ever read in the Gemara? Who was a Rabbi Zera, Rabbi Zakkai? He said, I never got upset at home. Miyamai lo hikparet. They asked him, what did you do to live so long? How did you merit long life? So among other things, he said, Miyamai lo hikpareti besoch beisi. I never became impatient in my house. I never got upset at home. It was like science fiction, man. That is science fiction. I never got upset at home. You mean your kid never broke his glasses? You never got upset when your kid broke his glasses? You never got upset when your mother-in-law came for an extended visit? You never got upset when your wife didn't make supper because she was talking to her sister? You never got upset, huh? Everything was just like, never got upset when the washing machine broke? Never got upset when somebody lost money? Never got upset. Right? Could you imagine? Miyamai lo hikpati. We have to be gold on the inside and gold on the outside. Not so simple. More. V'yatzakta lo arba taba'osa, and you make a golden crown around it. And v'yatzakta lo arba taba'osa, you make 4 rings of gold. V'nasata al arba pa'amosav, on the 4 corners. Ushtei taba'os al tzolach achaz, ushtei taba'os al tzolach hashenis. There are 4 rings. 4 golden rings where the poles are going to go through. You see, they look like Q-tips, right? In the picture, they look like Q-tips. You're going to put 4 golden rings there. You know what the commentaries say the golden rings represent? The never-ending reward of Olam Haba. What's the difference? A circle is never-ending. The circle is. Remember, I told you once the word. What's a tire in Hebrew? Galgal, which is really a word that repeats on itself. Gimel lamed, because it's exactly what a wheel is. A wheel just repeats on itself. It's a galgal. It's the same. It just repeats on it. Isn't that magical? That's what the Hebrew language is. Galgal. It's just a word that repeats on itself. And a wave is called a gal. A wave is called a gal, because the waves just keep coming at you. There's a gal and a galgal. It's just waves. A wheel is just waves going around and around. Except that you can't drown in a wheel. Right?
Why the wave once then, though?
What? Well, because otherwise we think it's a wheel. So you got to have some difference. But at the end of the day, it's the same concept. It's the same concept because it comes at you. Okay? So the rings are never ending. That represents the rings of Olam Haba. Okay. In any event, I just want to tell you a story, heartwarming story to end off with. When I was in college, maybe I told you this, but I don't know why I was thinking about. I was in college, and I had to write up a term paper in an English class. I told you this? I had to write up an English term paper. So my philosophy was, don't do today what you could put off till tomorrow. So I didn't get anywhere near doing this paper. And then the night before the paper was due, I sat down for about an hour, quickly wrote up something, and I gave it to my mother. Now my mother, she lived with me while she'd gone to nursing school. When I was a teenager, she went to nursing school. And I say, you never saw somebody who says every night for hours, biology, chemistry. Why they say she sat with my dad studying this stuff. That was not and so she was used to studying. So I said, and this is back in the days of manual typewriters. So I wrote this thing up in an hour. I said, hey, Ma, could you type this up for me? So she takes this paper, and then, she knows how to type real fast. So she types it up, she gives it back to me. This is the night before it's due. I spent about less than an hour on this paper. She types it up, she gives it back, she says, this is the biggest piece of garbage I've ever seen, right? So I handed the paper, and I get it back a couple of days later. The teacher writes, I got an A on the paper, The teacher writes a note at the top. I could see a lot of time and thought went into this, right? I came into the house waving that paper, and my mother would have said, she said like this. A couple of choice adjectives for the intellectual level of my instructor. Yeah, listen, Hashem loves the righteous. What can I tell you?